Well, hello. How are
Hi.
you doing? You finding
I'm
the
doing well,
the
thank you.
and how have you been finding election week and how are you finding it all?
Genuinely, like, really enjoying it. I'm constantly stressed, constantly sleep deprived, and constantly forgetting to eat. But on the whole, like, I actually love it, and it's so nice seeing everyone's support and like being able to like share my ideas and show how passionate I am. So on the whole, I am enjoying it. Yeah.
Well, for someone who's stressed and not getting much sleep, you don't look like it at all. I remember just walking around the SU with like big bags under my eyes. So you don't look it at all. But yeah, that's good you're enjoying it. And I think that's like the main part of elections. You've got to embrace it all. I'm loving your little egg puns, by the way.
The thing is, I didn't even plan this, but my campaign team just have taken it upon themselves to make the most ridiculous egg puns in the comments of every post I do, which I love. It's fantastic. But I am interested to see if they'll manage to keep them going all week.
They're doing well at the moment. I see them every now and then. And I was saying, like, I literally keep having dreams about elections in general, but excellent keeps coming to my mind now.
Oh,
So,
great.
so
It's
I
stuck
blame
in
you.
there. I like that.
Yeah, sorry. I guess you kind of said anyway, but like, what's been your favourite part about campaigning and this process?
Um, I think just like having been part of the SU and involved in the SU for like 5 years, I think just having an opportunity to really share properly what I want to achieve and show what I have achieved so far in the SU and like properly explain what I think would really make change happen. Like having the opportunity to do that and just show how passionate I am, and I really think that is coming across my campaign. So I've been really enjoying that. Yeah.
I think as well, like both yours, oh sorry, ignore my team's noise. Both yours and Helene's manifestos, and I think it's really important that your manifestos represent you as well as who you're representing. Like
Definitely.
a manifesto has to come from the person, and obviously, like you've mentioned, like throughout campaigning, like you've got a huge amount of experience, and I've been lucky enough to work with you through quite a few years of like different roles and stuff. But what would you say like was the main thing to motivate your manifesto and why you decided to run? And like, do you think your experience has shaped your manifesto as well? I mean,
Yeah, so I mean, I've mentioned this, I think I mentioned this question to candidates. I've been thinking about running for a number of years, nearly around last year. And then I thought Freya would be great, I won't do it. Um, but yeah, I've been thinking about it for a few years. And this year, I am doing a master's degree in clinical psychology. And I am co-chair of Nightline, which is my first year being co-chair, but I've been on committee before. And I think being co-chair has given me kind of um, a little bit more kind of involvement directly in the SU with Nightline, and has given me more ideas around what I'd like to improve in terms of student support. But it is like I have, as you said, I've done quite a few roles in the SU, and I think all of them have massively prepared me for community officer role in terms of I've got all of my ideas have come from that experience, and I've had a lot of conversations with like SU and university staff and student group committees about all my ideas. So all of them have come from somewhere and have backing to them. And I think basically just I've done a lot in the SU, and I think this is kind of like just the next step, I guess.
I was about you. I was literally about to say. I guess you were going to say the next step, and I think that's really important as well. Having, like you say, that student voice in the manifesto, because ultimately, as an officer, that's what you're going to have to do. And sometimes they've come from other people as well. But yeah, you said about like Nightline, and then you've mentioned it in your manifesto, and you talk about mental health and well-being, and of course like student welfare as well. So I guess like how are you planning to support student welfare if you were like elected? I said life a lot there.
It's fine. Um, so I have a few ideas, and so predominantly they've come from work I've done on Nightline. So I spent 500 hours on Nightline shifts, which sounds like I have absolutely no life, but a lot of the shifts we just sleep for. So having talked to students about difficulties they're facing, I feel like I have a good understanding of where the gaps are in student support. So one of the gaps I think I've identified is in male mental health. I think male students are a lot less likely to seek support when they're struggling and talk through what they're struggling with. So I spoke to student services and they identified that in access to their services as well. So the way I want to combat that is creating a whole male mental health campaign, creating workshops and forums for male students to come and talk about what they're struggling with, talk about the difficulties they're facing, and creating resources for male students to approach their friends about the difficulties they're facing as well. I also want to improve Be Well Talk Now, which is quite a new service, which is like a live chat and phone service, and I really want to improve that, because I think, so I was involved in the testing of the service, and I think it is really great, but it is like a national service rather than specific to Bath, and I think that is something that needs to be improved in terms of getting the advisors to understand what support is available at Bath, and yeah, the right places to signpost to. So with Nightline, we have a massive information folder with 1 million places to signpost to, and I think that could be really helpful in kind of training the advisors and improve Be Well Talk Now. Also to do with signposting, I know, Freya, you're working on a signposting tool on the SU and university website, and I really want to continue that work and make sure that that signposting tool is like at the forefront of the SU and university websites, like the top banner at the top of the websites, and like one click and you find the support available to you, because I think there is kind of a lot of services available, and often it's hard to know where's the right place to go.
I love the word signposting. It's so true. I remember being asked, like, do you think it's the service or the signposting that needs improving, and saying both. So I'm really glad you said that. And like you say, I haven't managed to do it yet, so there's definitely room to get it done. But yeah, it all sounds really interesting, and also really glad to hear about the male mental health, because like you say, it's definitely something that we've noticed as like a gap this year and what we could be doing. So it's very exciting. Yeah, and I guess, of course, like another big challenge that we've had this year is the dreaded COVID. So not to talk about it, but I think that's made it bigger, definitely in like my year in this role, is looking at how we can support students financially, and obviously that's been something to consider always. So I don't think it's necessarily something that people always think comes into this role. So it doesn't matter if you don't really have an answer to this, but like, is it something you've considered, and how you would financially support students?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think money is a massive issue at the moment, not just for students, but I think for the university. So my ideas are kind of more about redistributing the money that is already allocated for bursaries and scholarships, with this in mind. So currently, to the best of my understanding, the only scholarship or bursary available to international students is for academic attainment. International students can't apply to the Bath bursary, because they need to, in order to come and study in the UK, they need to prove they have financial support. But obviously, if you come and study in the UK, all sorts of things can happen to mean that you need financial support. So I want to make sure that Bath bursary is available to international students, or at least like a small chunk of it is available to international students, so that international students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds still get kind of the same support as home students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Yeah, I think a lot of my ideas are around international students. So I also want to reduce the fees for the uni guarantor scheme, which currently costs 3.5% of the total lease to join. And if you don't have a guarantor as an international student, you have to pay full rent up front, which is obviously a huge amount of money. So making it more accessible for international students to get access to a guarantor. And then a lot, I guess, kind of housing issues come into this a little bit in terms of financial support. So I want to lobby for individualised rent rebates, so that, yeah, the rent rebates are extended beyond the lockdown period, so that when lockdown's over, you don't feel like you have to rush back to your on-campus accommodation. And yeah, obviously that's not great for COVID rates. So yeah, basically I want to make the university more accessible to international students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And I have a lot of ideas around housing as well. I also want to support STAR and Amnesty in lobbying for undergraduate scholarships for asylum seekers. So yeah, that's a bit off topic, but yeah.
No, I'm glad you put that one in there as well, because it's definitely still on the radar, and something that we've set up a group for as well. But yeah, it all sounds really interesting. I'm trying not to, it's really nice hearing like everything you're saying, and some things that, obviously this role is so wide ranging, and I think we've probably had this conversation before in terms of you've said things that I haven't thought of, and it's really interesting to have like someone's perspective who hasn't been in the role for like, I don't know how long I've been in it now, but it's really nice to have that like fresh set of eyes on it. So yeah, sounds great. And just something else I noticed, like from your manifesto, and again, like kind of ties in with what we were saying about mental health. The lights in my office are now going off. But yeah, obviously you spoke about loneliness, and I think last year, I might be wrong here, but it was on the university's top 10. This year we decided not to put it on. just because obviously we had loads of other things coming up, but obviously it's still like a massive thing. And when we do our surveys, we see that student loneliness is really high. And I think, again, COVID and not being able to join societies and stuff like that has kind of definitely made that more of a challenge as well. But yeah, just kind of wanted to ask you a bit more about what's on your manifesto in terms of like tackling loneliness and how you would plan to do it, really.
So I think that loneliness is a massive issue, especially with COVID. We can obviously only interact with people inside our households at the moment, and I think that is something that I really, when restrictions allow, I really want to make a massive calendar of in-person and virtual events throughout the year. So as you know, I was Freshers Week event manager last year, so we planned really like a creative set of virtual and in-person events, which we really like. I had to really think outside the box with a lot of them because obviously we couldn't do the usual events. So when restrictions are lifted slightly, I think bringing in some of those events again could be really good. And a lot of them are really low cost and affordable because obviously the SU is experiencing financial difficulty at the moment. So I think that's really important. So that's something I definitely want to do. Obviously, when restrictions are fully lifted, which hopefully will be in June, but who knows at this point, I really want to make sure that the freshers from 2020 have some like nights out and things, because that's what they missed out on in Freshers Week. I think I've said this a few times, but I can't promise that because obviously like that does rely on capacity and safety, and it does rely on finances. But that is something I'm definitely keen to do. So making events like Summer Ball and Snowball bigger and better and more frequent, not just for freshers from last year, but also from for returning students, because we've all missed out on a year of fun, and it would be really nice to have a really great year next year. Yeah, so that's that side of things. And then another area I've identified is for placement students. So when I was on placement, it was really, really isolating. I was living at my family home, and I didn't have really any friends in my hometown anymore because everyone had been at university. And I think, yeah, placement can be a really isolating experience, and you're away from Bath, and you often don't know a lot of the services available at Bath are still available to you on placement. So increasing that advertisement, but also creating a placement matching system so that you can meet Bath students on placement near you. Yeah, so I think you can currently see a list of placement students and where they'll be, but I want to create like a proper like platform where you can see like where everyone is, and you can interact with people, and you get email addresses from people who are keen to meet others on placement near them as well, to just hopefully make placement a little bit more inclusive and a little bit more less lonely and less isolating.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I'm going to be completely honest, it is not something that I have any expertise in whatsoever. And obviously I didn't do a placement myself, so it's really interesting to hear, like, especially from your experience as well. And I know that's something people have discussed before, but it would be really nice to actually see it happen. And like you say, like that's a massive part of loneliness, I guess, and placements. And yeah, I'm going to stop rambling because this isn't about me, but it's just nice to have a conversation about it and talk to people who have interest in the same area, I guess. But yeah, generally I just think you're doing really great. You and Helene are both like absolutely smashing this week, and I feel really proud watching you both, especially having like worked with both of you in different areas of the SU. I do feel a bit like a proud mum, even though I'm saying that, and I'm like, it's just, yeah, you've done so well, and keep the egg puns going. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say or add.
Just that voting's open, and it would be great if you could vote for all the officer positions. That would be wonderful, and I have a great time on my social media. We have a lot of fun. It's at Meg for Community if you want to have a look.
Great, thank you very much. I'll leave you to the rest of, there's still some sunshine, not that you can see it through my window, but try and get a walk in and stare at the screen less.
Yeah, will do.
How are you? How are you doing? How are you finding election week?
Good. It's been way more exciting and fun than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be super stressful, but it's more like every day, like a new thing to like, oh, like today we can post this and like, do this. So it's been really fun. Very challenging, but it's been good.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because I think that's definitely like the most important part of an election week, and definitely from doing it last year, I think it's really easy to get stressed with it, but actually having fun with it is so important to do as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm always worried about, oh, is this the right thing to be posting? Like, oh, it's not very like officery and things like that. But I think like, okay, but this is the way I would do it and this is me. So I think I'm having fun with that as well. Sticking true to myself.
It's good because it gives you an idea of what an officer would be like, you know, as an officer. So I think it's really nice to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's your favourite bit been about campaigning so far? Because obviously it's been a bit different this year. You haven't got the screaming outside the library and stuff like that. But
I think honestly my favorite bit has probably been today, like where I can actually like reach out to people, because right up until like now, I kind of thought, okay, I don't want to, you know, over message people or, you know, spam people with too much stuff about like me and my campaign and things like that. And really just have like more impactful conversations, like one-to-one with people. And I think like starting today, as soon as the voting opened, I was able to, you know, message my friends and message my groups and be like, hey guys, like I'm running, like go vote, plant some trees if you want to. Yeah, so I think like that aspect's been really nice.
I like that you're also wearing the yellow representing your campaign colour. Was that intentional or was it just an accident?
I want to say accidentally, but it's pretty intentional. I have the orange sweater, which is in a lot of my videos, but I feel like I've overworn it to the point where people are going to be like, okay, does this girl have any other sweaters than just orange? But yeah.
I really like it. I'm going to ask a really strange question, which isn't really that strange because I know you. But obviously, you know, you've spoken about your experience, and a lot of people would probably say, like, why hasn't she won for sports officer? Mm-hmm. Obviously, I've like had the pleasure of working with you in different areas, but I guess like for other people who don't know, like why did you decide to run for community officer and not sport? And
So yeah, that's one of the things that I've been worried about with my campaign, that like most of my experience has been within sports, and that people are gonna be like, okay, what is this girl doing in community, you know? But I think so through my roles in like the volleyball committee, I've been really heavily involved I'm kind of in the volleyball club. I'm known as like the keen bean, who like from my first year, I was like, I want to be on committee. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to help. And so that has like primed me a little bit with like leadership roles and more like, not that I want to be a leader. Oh, sorry about that, the sound, but right. Not that I want to be a leader necessarily, but more like a coach and set an example and like help people through like my ability to do that. And I think mostly through being inclusion officer on sports exec has taught me so much this year about, you know, inclusion and diversity and, you know, working with underrepresented groups and, you know, allyship and, you know, supporting minorities. And I think that was like a massive part in me wanting to do community instead, because a lot of the ideas that I was thinking of for within my inclusion role and that I wanted to bring forward were more about, you know, building the community and like working with societies and all things that could be applicable to any group, like not necessarily sport. So I figured, you know what, like let's go for it. Let's go for community. Let's try it.
Yeah, and I think we say it's so important that it's come from a sport area, but it doesn't mean it doesn't apply. And like it doesn't matter where you've got that experience from, it's applicable everywhere. So I'm very glad that you are running for this role. And I guess just in a bit of a tangent separately from that, but obviously like sports and societies, you know, it's undeniable that they haven't had the same kind of, I guess, uptake and like new people joining, and a lot of it they haven't been able to do like the same activities. And on your manifesto, you discussed like rebuilding the community. I know you were worried in questions to candidates. You were like, I'm not just like selling big nights out. Like I also want to, you know, community build. But I just wondered if you'd like talk a bit more about, you know, you said about socializing events and what do you envision that kind of looking like if you had, you know, you're in the store next year, what's that going to look like?
Yeah, so with the like rebuilding the community and like, so essentially the idea, and I didn't want to put it in my manifesto like this because I was scared there's gonna be like negative connotations towards it, that hosting like a year-long Freshers Week, where basically like the community feeling that you get in Freshers Week, that everyone, you know, is friends with each other, everyone wants to be friends with each other, like you're talking to like 50 people that, you know, as soon as your Freshers Week's done, you probably never see anymore like for the rest of your 4 years. You just kind of have that like community vibe, and you know, it doesn't really matter where you're from or like what you do or what course you do or, you know, what A-level grades you got, like you're all in Bath and you're all part of like the like, oh, we all got to Bath, like that kind of vibe. But I thought it was such a shame that like as soon as like Freshers Week is over, you join your society, you join your sport, like you join your, you know, faith and cultural group, and that's like you find your new like home, which is super lovely. But
sorry, I'm still listening. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I went into the dark. Please carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, like as soon you kind of stick to your group then, and there's very little overlap with societies and sports and things like that. So creating kind of like collaboration between all of them. So having like a cross board meetings, which was one of my ideas with the diversity and support groups, especially, you know, bringing the execs from societies, sports, diversity and support, like faith and cultural, all of those together in like bi-weekly meetings, for example, just to talk about, you know, what is sports doing and how can we bring in the societies and how can we kind of collaborate with diversity and support? Like, what do we need to consider? Things like that, to kind of have like, okay, like you're all representing students and you all want to feel like a Bath community. I don't know if
yeah, and I think it's definitely something that we've spoken about quite a lot, I think, in the SU of how do we join those areas together. So yeah, it's really nice to hear. And I guess on like a slightly different note, I think it's really interesting how like year on year the community role changes depending who's in it and, you know, what the priority areas are. So obviously you and Meg both spoke about like mental health and well-being, and I think naturally that's becoming a bigger part of this role where we're prioritizing students' mental health. But in terms of, you know, your manifesto and what you'd like to bring, yeah, what would we say are like your priorities in this area, and if you were elected that you'd want to look at?
Yeah, so I think with this one, I think what sets me apart from, you know, the ideas that Meg has, which are also very good ideas, is that I know that we're coming out of a year of COVID, and I've seen a lot of my friends struggle that I've never seen struggle before with mental health. And, you know, so many friends, but it's stuck inside in their flat and they don't have that social connection or interaction. You kind of, you know, get tired. You don't want to always be messaging people as well. You want to like go and do stuff with them. So after a year like that, I realized that mental health is, you know, it's in all of us, like you said in your manifesto, Freya, that we all kind of need to work together to, you know, host like events and like reach out to people. And more, I was looking more at like the proactive way of reducing, you know, mental health issues and struggles, because there's so much that can be done. Like, you know, if you send one message to a person one day and just be like, oh, like I haven't talked to you in so long, like how are you doing? Like that could make them feel so much better. So I think in that sense, like I know that's something I do a lot with my friends. Like if I haven't talked to them in a while, I'll just out of the blue message them and be like, oh, how have you been? Like, you know, and for some people I know it might be awkward, like, oh, what if they don't reply? Like what if they, you know, leave me unread? But you still like give them the opportunity to feel like loved and cared for. So I think taking more like the proactive side. I know like the reactive is also very important, which is why on my manifesto I put about, you know, measuring the efficiency of well-being services, because they're doing such a great job. But I think a lot of times a lot of issues can be resolved just by seeing, okay, what is the biggest cause of students coming? Is it that there's too many deadlines in a short period of time? Okay, then we consult, you know, academics and, you know, the education officer. If it's that, you know, sports isn't on, then we see, okay, how can we improve like the sporting offer? Yeah, so I think kind of like that, you know, the proactive and reactive side, you know, just bringing people together again, like making people feel cared for, I think.
Yeah, that's so nice. Obviously. No, not at all. It's really interesting, and it shows, you know, it also gives that why, like why are you doing this and why are you running? So it's really nice to hear. I guess kind of a segue from that, but you were saying about like the effectiveness of wellbeing services and how we can then like pinpoint, you know, if there's, like you say, for example, if there's too many deadlines in one area. On your manifesto, you mentioned about holding the university to account. Obviously this year, this has been like a big thing that we do in our job, and I don't necessarily know if as officers we show that as much. But I just kind of wanted to ask, like, you know, that was on your manifesto, and I think sometimes people aren't clear what that means, but what would that look like to you in terms of doing that as an officer?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so with this one, I think like one of the most important bits of like being an officer is just, making sure that like you liaise with the students and like, make sure the university does what they say they're gonna do, which like you've done an amazing job of, and like every community officer before you has done. And I was talking to Alicia, and she, was talking about all these forums that she set up, and that they got so many like really good points out of it. And like I know that a lot of diversity and support groups like Race Equality have forums, and they have discussions, and a lot of stuff comes out of that. But a lot of times it's kind of just like a list of demands, and it just gets sent to someone. And I mean, I don't really know what the back end of the SU looks like just yet, but I feel like it just gets sent to someone and just kind of, oh, this person will do that and this person will do that, and then it just kind of like loses its momentum a little bit. Yeah, so mostly just making sure that the points that we send to play or that come out of those forums are actionable and like easily actionable, like breaking it down into smaller things and like making proper like timelined plan and like budget and things like that, which I know makes it sound really boring now, but yeah, I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, it totally does. And I know when I came into this role, there was a lot of things that had happened last year, and I think you mentioned about like summits, which we haven't really done this year, but it would be really good to see them again, because loads of the stuff that I'm doing with student services has come from the feedback that we got on the summit. And I'm probably not always the best at relaying what we're doing there, but like you say, that we needed a timeline, and I'm going off on a tangent in this every time. I'm like, it's not about me, but yeah, it's really important to have those smaller and those big term ones as well, and seeing like how long it's going to take to achieve them. So yeah, thank you. On a slightly different note, but you mentioned about, well, I was about to call it matchmaking, and I know that's not actually what you called it, but about in terms of like, I think it was, please correct me if I'm wrong, but like an app of how to match students who have like different interests and things like that. Did you want to kind of talk about that a bit more, and what that would look like and how you kind of see that?
Yeah. So I know when students first come to university, obviously there's thousands and thousands of students here, and there's no way you can meet every single one. But your best friend could be right around the corner and you would have no idea that they're there. And I thought, with freshers a lot of the times, and I think especially with COVID year this year, they've kind of struggled to find, like-minded people or people they can get on with. So I thought a way to kind of combat that, and like a friend-making service type of thing, where you basically at the start of the year, you fill out a form, or like throughout the year, you fill out a form and you put in your, what sports you like to do, if you like team sports or individual, if you like to draw, if you're, vegetarian, you're very into like the planet, or, you like robots, things like that. And it just gives you a list of like all the societies and sports clubs you could join, and faith and cultural groups, just to kind of show you the offering, because I feel like there's so much out there that a lot of students don't know where to go. And I know in Freshers Week it can be like very intimidating, and you're going to all these like Freshers Fair stands, and you're like talking to like 70 societies, and you don't know which to join, so you just join them all. But so that in that sense, and then it would also, I don't exactly know how it would like translate into like practice. I think there are definitely apps out there that could help, facilitate that, or, it could even be something as simple as a Facebook page or like a forum, where we then pair you with people that have similar interests. So, if there's another Brazilian person at the university who loves volleyball and loves coffee, for example, then like, that's very like the chances are quite like slim. They would like pair you together, and it doesn't mean you have to be friends, but it just gives that like opportunity for people to meet people a bit easier, I think.
Yeah, and I guess that's going to be so important, like coming out of the post-COVID world, and to integrate like different years as well. So yeah, really good point. The last thing I was just going to ask you about quickly, and I keep asking you, just would you like to expand on it? So feel free not to. But something that I didn't really think about when I came into this role was about affordability, and especially with this year, it's been something that my job's looked at quite a bit. And I know you kind of mentioned about affordability for international students as an international student yourself. So yeah, what were the points that you put on your manifesto, and I guess like why did you choose to put them on?
Yeah, so with affordability, I knew that was a very important part of that, because I know the student experience can be very, very expensive, and some people just don't have the funds to do that. And I think the last thing I wanted was for students to have to cut down on, buying food that is healthy for them, or buying enough food, or, having to crank their radiator way low to save on energy, or, trying to make like budget cuts in terms of like sports and activities. Like I personally know a lot of people that haven't been able to join the teams that they wanted to because they just couldn't afford the equipment that had to go along with it, like those mandatory costs that go along with joining a sports club. And so I thought in that term that I don't want people to sacrifice their student experience and standard of living just because they can't afford it. And I think that's such a shame. And especially for, international students, I think a massive part, and I know it's very big, a hot topic now, is to, cut their tuition fee, which I know would be very hard. But if we do it in the form of offering scholarships to international students because they don't have access to student loans, so trying to, combat that. And I know a lot of EU students now are going to have to pay international fees as well. So in that sense, that was one of the big points of my manifesto that I'll work towards. I don't know the logistics of working with the governments and how it works, but I definitely would love to learn. Another was just making sure that students have access to different funds and different bursaries, and one of my points is like smaller bursaries for students to pay for their equipment, and mini scholarships, if you could say, just to kind of support those people who really need it, or, who might not need it that badly, but if they don't, like, it would just be a big help for them. I think that's
right. Thank you. I don't know the logistics very well either. I know that tuition fees is a very hard one, but it's definitely something that ITA has spoken about this year. And even if it's something they're campaigning for and being able to support them, I know sometimes there's like conflict of interest, whether you're anyway, I won't go into it. It's really boring. But the issue is important, just to clarify. It's super important. So yeah. Very last thing I was just going to say is your TikToks are looking great. Very strong TikTok game. Had you ever done a TikTok before campaign week?
You know what? I have.
I'm glad you were honest about that. You were like, yeah, I'm proud I have.
I'm not a natural. No, I think I've made like 4 TikToks as a joke before, but one of them I was very shocked that completely blew up. Like 200,000 views, like 44,000 likes. Like it was literally, it doesn't even have my face in it. So if anyone talks to me about like, oh, your TikTok blew up, I'm like, yeah, but I didn't get famous from it. Just my foot was in it. But yeah, so if anyone wants to check that out, you can go check out my actual TikTok, which has like 3 on them. But yeah, so I have a bit of experience with TikTok fame, if you could say so.
That's the first thing I'm going to do after this is like, why is Helen's foot in a TikTok? I'm on the hunt now to see it. But yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're TikTok trained. And yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add or just say?
No, I think I think it's been a bit of a shame with the like campaign that I haven't really been able to get like a lot of my actual points out there. Like I want to, give off this like fun vibe as well, because I think that's just what students need right now, like regardless of, their race, sexuality, like, where they're from. I think everyone just wants a bit of like feeling like a community. And I know there's a lot of very important issues that go alongside that. So, like financial, mental health, like sexual health, and all things that I think are very important as well, and that I'm very interested to work towards. But they're on my manifesto if you want to go check that out. But yeah, I think right now, like what the students just need is a bit of fun and a bit of like de-stressing from, the pandemic and their course. And I think this year's just been very intense. So I'm also very, very proud of everyone that's made it through this year. And you as well, Freya. I feel like I'm looking at you, but I'm talking to like the student population. I'm very, very proud of everyone to make it through this year, because it has not been easy. But yeah.
Great, thank you very much. But yeah, it's been lovely talking to you as always, and enjoy the sun while it lasts, which I keep saying to everyone in all my meetings, and anyone who has me all through the day is probably like, is she ever going to say anything else? But well-being, get out and have a walk, it's so good for you. and give yourself a break from screens, which I'm saying to all the candidates, but everyone's saying about headaches and their eyes hurting. So it's definitely a different style of campaigning. And like you and Meg are absolutely smashing it. I said the same to Meg as well. Like you're both doing an incredible job. And I feel super proud being able to work with both of you this year in your different roles and being able to watch you and both and have, you know, really strong manifestos that represent each of you. It's been really nice. So I look forward to watching the rest of the week. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Freya. I was not expecting all this flattery. I'm blushing. Oh, thank you so much for all your support as well. Like you guys have done such an amazing job with it. And you have very big boots to fill. So, you know, Meg and I are shaking a little bit.
That's make an awful joke and say I'm only size 4, so you're fine.
Yeah.